Good morning, friends. Welcome to our Tuesday morning coffee chat here in the Commons. We are also broadcasting live, and this will be recorded for playback at a later time. If we can begin with a moment of silence and an opening prayer, and then we'll go into our questions and comment period. Dear loving and gracious God, we thank you for this day. We thank you, Lord, for spring and its renewal. We thank you for the rain and now the sunshine. I pray that you'll bless each one here and those listening on the broadcast this morning. Father, just pray that you'll help us to deal with COVID in a good, solid way, and help it not to affect too many more. Help us to come out of that season, Father, and know that you're in charge and that you have really good plans for us. Thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So good morning. I hope there wasn't any confusion this morning. That was on my part. I'm sorry. I'm a week ahead. I'm anticipating a grandchild, as you know, in the next few days, and so I keep thinking forward, and so I rushed a whole week out of my life. But we are going to start meeting in every other week in the Commons so we can broadcast and reach more folks. We have a small audience today. We are socially distanced as much as we can. We are all masked unless we're having coffee. And today we can just open it up to questions. We have some helpers in the audience. Tom is here, thank you, to help with microphones so we can hear the questions or comments. I've invited Carrie to attend as well in case you have some questions or comments about COVID and some of the protocol. I think Carrie will want to share some of that information that we're going to put different information out this week that will hopefully help clarify where we're at and what we need to do. But at this point, I'll open it up to some comments or questions from the audience.
My first is a comment instead of a question. We need to put, management needs to put a way of the people that dump the trash cans down in on the first floor so they can get back in the building without unlocking the second door. The double doors. The door has to be latched in order for the catch. And if they unlatch the door, they go outside and they forget to latch it when they come back in. My next is, I don't know if you'd call it a question or a comment, but we had a very good dinner Easter, except for one thing. They called it crab cake, but I would call it stovetop stuffing. It did not have enough crab into it to taste the crab, to even make you think that it might be crab cake. We get steak, we get chicken salad, we get other things, and it's not stovetop stuffing. As far as I'm concerned, that was a disgrace to the lunch.
Well, I appreciate the comments. We will look at the system for latching, unlatching, and being able to dispose of refuse properly and having it a little easier to get back in and making sure the doors are secure afterwards. And we'll pass along the comment to the dining team. Thank you for the initial comment about such a good meal on Easter. I think the team did a phenomenal job, but the feedback is always important on individual items. Thank you. Beverly?
I think I solved the mystery of the light covers coming off. The other day, housekeeping doing their job like they're supposed to, they were dusting the light covers up top, and they were falling off. So that might be, they're trying very hard, but that might be one of the reasons they're falling off.
Right. Well, thank you for that. If you've been to the Commons in other areas, you've noticed some of these light covers, which are kind of fancy, but they're coming off in the hallways. Yeah, exactly. So as we're cleaning them, it's maybe hard to put back on. I think they only have so much of a life. Oh, dear. All right. Well, we'll take a look at that process. But kudos to the housekeeping team for keeping them clean. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Connor?
Just a comment, but I noticed the other day a friend of mine who is handicapped had to park over near the Williamsburg Garden. And I was thinking it sure would be nice if we could assign handicap parking spaces based on need to those who have them.
And are you talking about not permanent handicap parking, but somebody who has a sort of an acute episode and has a more immediate need?
No, I'm talking about permanent handicap.
Permanent handicap.
It'd be nice if the ones who are more handicapped could be assigned a space close to the building.
Well, we can bring that up to the transportation team and talk about that. I know we have a certain allocation of number of handicap spots, and sometimes people do park in those for overnight. It's by law they can do that, but some people really do need to get up close and get closer.
It is, we have plenty of handicap spaces.
Yeah.
Some of the ones who are not as handicapped as others seem to get the best space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you for that sensitivity. That's something we can talk about as a team.
I'm just trying to find out, when you have been quarantined for 5 days with COVID, is the next, are you to be quarantined for another 5 days or more than 5 days? I've been hearing 5 days, but yet I've been seeing release dates from social activity for more than 5 days. And I'm just trying to figure out what the protocol is.
Okay. No, thank you for that question. So the messaging for COVID and our response, as some of you are very familiar, has changed during this entire pandemic. And we are finding that it is changing almost monthly even now, with the different resurgence and also more understanding of the effectiveness of vaccine and other medications available. Just this past month, the CDC did release new recommendations regarding anyone who is positive for COVID, and those rules and guidance are irrespective of vaccination status. Additionally, for someone who has been contact traced, there's one set of guidance for those that are fully up to date with their vaccine, and one set of guidance for those that are not up to date with their vaccine. So when someone on campus is identified as positive, or even contact trace, but especially positive, there's a lot of information that we have to go through to collect with that individual based on when the test was administered, if they had symptoms, when those symptoms actually started in relation to when the test was provided, the contact tracing as to who they may have come in contact with. For contact tracing, we don't have to get as much information of who you've been around, but we do have to double check whether or not an individual has symptoms, making sure that they understand the testing schedule. Depending on those responses, guidance is provided individually regarding how many days of a quarantine are required and how many days additional precaution needs to be required. We know that everyone who is identified as positive has a minimum of 5 days of that quarantine or isolation period. You don't graduate to the next level of precaution if you still have symptoms within that last 48 hours. Once you graduate out of the quarantine phase, you actually have another 5 days minimum of needing to wear a mask in all areas when you're out and about to protect others. That does include not having meals in a congregate setting. If anything changes during that period of time, even if the individual is testing and the tests are negative, if they start to develop symptoms, it is possible that that time frame may be extended for additional precaution. If I'm contact traced, it does depend whether or not I'm up to date on vaccination or not. If I'm up to date on vaccination, I do not need to quarantine, but I am not to have congregate meals for 10 days. When we talk about congregate meals, we're not talking about just who's at the table with me in the dining room. We're talking about the entire dining room. If I'm contact traced and I'm not up to date on vaccine, my restrictions, my precautions are to be quarantined, and I believe that is for a full 10 days now. I didn't write down the exact days, but if I'm not up to date on vaccine and exposed, during that entire 10-day period, I do need to quarantine, arrange with the clinic to still be tested, share any symptoms, hoping that I don't end up converting to a positive, but I need to be quarantined because I'm more likely to contract and carry the virus. So each letter that goes out to an individual, which we do have now going out to each individual when they are contacted and informed that they're positive or that they've been contact traced, we give them the basics that they need to know for right then and there for safety. And we follow up with a letter and then follow up with phone calls. In each letter, it will again specify the amount of time of quarantine by the date that I first can go to the next level. So if I'm in quarantine, the way the letter is written, it will tell me what day I can come out of quarantine and be around others with my mask on. It additionally addresses dining and indicates on which day I can start coming to the dining room. So we've tried to spell that out to make it as direct as we can for planning purposes, but understanding that if my conditions change at any point during that period, those dates could be extended. Questions on that? I know it's a lot because it's unfortunately, we got used to one pattern that said if you're this, here's everybody's got the same rule, and now the rules are different, much more so than they were even 6 months ago. So it is really important. We will continue to message and ask that residents not only share with us if they're having symptoms so we can help guide for follow-up, but also if you end up getting vaccines or other items related to preventative measures outside of campus, that you let us know so that we can keep that in your record, so that should anything occur, we have a snapshot of where you are in the response directions and can give you appropriate guidance. If we don't have information, we will always err on the side of the most protective until we can confirm otherwise.
Can you say more about if someone has a symptom, are they contacting the clinic and dispatch?
Sure. So when we talk about having symptoms and who to contact and what to do, because COVID is so transmittable, and it's most likely to be able to transmit if I'm not fully masked, we do encourage individuals with any symptoms to contact the clinic. After hours, you can call the main number. It will roll over to the assisted living charge nurse. But to contact the clinic so that we can help guide and make arrangements for testing. There are a lot of individuals that have symptoms, and just categorically, nationwide, that are very similar to what they normally would expect or have experienced with allergies. And I know everyone in this room and watching, we're in Richmond, so we all know what allergies have been about this year, more so than possibly last year. So the symptoms are very much the same, and it could be allergies, but it could be something else. So testing is very important for that. With advanced symptoms or multiple symptoms, in addition to testing, medication relief is often a really big thing that all of us would like to have sooner than later. On campus, we are not allowed to, or we're not skilled, trained, or licensed to diagnose and prescribe treatment, even over the counter. So there are a lot of times when an individual, it will be recommended that instead of having the nurse come and do a quick test, that Dispatch Health be contacted to come and do the testing and go ahead and assess and provide medication and prescriptions for any symptoms that need to be treated. If I have been exposed but am not having any symptoms, or if I just want to double check because I wasn't told I was exposed, but I just want to make sure I'm not carrying the virus without knowing it, we do offer the PCR testing in the lower level of the manor twice a week. And residents are able to take advantage of that at any time. We discourage strongly anyone with known symptoms to go to that location just because of the potential to shed the virus when I'm there with my mask down, even though it's for a small period of time. So that is one of the additional reasons we recommend contacting the clinic. Additionally, when I contact the clinic, if I need to stay home until I'm tested or I'm just not feeling well and I just don't want to go out, the clinic is also able at that same time to initiate the additional support services. So when we have a resident who's on isolation, in addition to the free meal delivery, we do make arrangements for trash collection. We make arrangements for mail delivery if the resident chooses. We do additional checks on the resident to see what else might be needed or how we can support. And if I'm in quarantine but still need to be tested, arrangements for that are made as well. If I'm just a little under the weather and it doesn't impact me as far as being on quarantine, I still may benefit from things like having my meals delivered, and we want to be able to arrange that and then continue to check to see if anything changes. So that communication is really important for us to be able to offer those additional services. It's not designed in any way to be taken as a punitive situation. It's really there for support. It's also there for education and information and to minimize potential exposure to others. Does anyone have questions about the difference between up-to-date and not, or about the PCR test versus the POC or the quick while you wait 15-minute test? Yes, ma'am. The health department has just reviewed our information and has agreed fully with basically what I just said as far as the response. It is in line with the CDC. On the CDC website, the being out with a mask after exposure or positivity doesn't specify the being around others while eating without the mask. It's written directly that I'm going to have a mask on all the time, no matter what. And that's one of the reasons that in talking with the health department, we specified dining with others, because when I eat, we've all become very accustomed to the rule that I wear a mask, and if it says that I need to wear a mask in any location, it's understood that I can remove it when I'm going to eat or drink. If I actively have virus and or potentially have virus, the health department does not want us doing that. And so they did suggest, as I had indicated, no congregate dining, if you will, for that additional time frame after I've been diagnosed positive or if I have been contact traced. And contact tracing for not dining does apply regardless of vaccination status. But if I'm not up to date, I have the additional quarantine requirement. So we have worked very closely with the local health department and all of our state agencies from day one with this entire process. And sometimes that does end up being an opportunity for us to work with them and make day-to-day life as comfortable as we can for the residents and really understand what the requirements are and have a chance to look at what can we do to go ahead and mitigate that potential for infection without completely stopping everything. And you may have heard on the news, China, as an example, has continued to completely shut down when there's pockets of infection. We have had a pocket of infection. That is basically what we've had. But with appropriate mitigation, we're able to control that, and we do not have to eliminate all services and program. Now, I will say there's a caveat to that. The caveat is the resident responsibility. So as independent residents, yes, you have the right to choose how you will respond to any protocol that we enact. But above and beyond that, you also have a responsibility to your neighbors for goodwill and safety. So if you are having symptoms and do not notify anyone, do not quarantine, do not seek medical guidance and testing, and do not follow masking and other requirements, you are potentially endangering the others around you. Because even vaccinated and up to date, I can still get the virus. And depending on my personal medical condition, my reaction to the virus may be very different than Tom's or Tom Deal's or Julie's. So as providers, as Covenant Woods operationally is, we appreciate the independence of individuals to be able to make those informed decisions. So we put out as much information as we can. We'll continue to update the way we put it out and where it's available. We will put restrictions in place if needed. For example, masking at all times, making sure that we're sharing in response to a situation for that individual how they should be responding. And yet we're also trusting that the resident population will respond accordingly and respect the safety not just of themselves, but of the others around them. So that is one of the reasons why there have been a couple questions recently. Why did we not shut everything down on April 11th? We could have. Statistically, it would not have changed much of what happened. The pocket that we have pretty much would have still been the pocket that we have. Could it have been less? Maybe, but it wouldn't necessarily be non-existent. And for everyone who was self-protecting prior to that and immediately went into following protocol and masking and paying attention to their surroundings, it would have taken away a lot of their freedom to enjoy things on campus because of a few.
Just a heads up.
Yes.
I have friends that just had the second booster,
Mhm.
and they had a 2-day reaction. Headaches, sore throat, and very, very tired, but 2 days after the second booster. So we need to be aware of that maybe.
Yes, most definitely. And when we do have the additional boosters available on campus, thank you. We'll go ahead and try to make sure everyone's aware of that. We still want to know in the clinic so we can help guide, but it is expected, particularly if I've previously had a reaction to any of the vaccine, that I will have a reaction to the booster. There was a question recently as to why the booster clinic was postponed. And as mentioned in the communique, it was the decision of the local health department who was providing the manpower to conduct said clinic. And from a manpower standpoint, the local health department does rely on medical reserve volunteers and other medical volunteers who have specifically signed up to assist with a COVID response. It was the decision of the team that is here in Hanover that they would feel more comfortable, because at the time we were getting new cases each day, to just wait and go ahead and have the clinic when there weren't new cases every day, not knowing who may or may not have been exposed. And we appreciate them making that decision. And so we did reschedule it as quickly as we could from a space availability standpoint in their schedule. So that is why the date got moved to May 9th. But the decision to change was based on the team that was going to be available and will be available to provide that vaccine. So individuals still have the option to receive their vaccine from other outside sources. It's just that large clinic has been moved to May 9th. We did receive one question in writing that we were able to respond to, but may be pertinent to some others for information purposes. And the question is, how is contact tracing currently being handled with so many new positive tests happening? And knock on wood, we haven't had so many new in the last couple of days, but at the time this was written, we were sending memos almost every day. So each time a positive case is identified, as I mentioned, we need to investigate with that individual, when and where they were tested, if we didn't do it, who they've been in contact with, what type of symptoms they had, so we can help with guiding how far back historically we're asking them to share who they were in contact with, and gathering all of that information. Sometimes I'm able to identify who I've been with during that period of time that I potentially was shedding the virus. Sometimes I'm not. So if I'm able to identify specific individuals, then the clinic is able to reach those individuals directly and say, Tom, Julie, needing to reach out to you because you have been contact traced to someone who has been diagnosed positive for COVID, and here are the steps that we need you to take. Again, now followed up by an additional written letter. If I don't know everybody that I potentially came in contact with, it was a group setting, we were mingling, there's all kinds of different scenarios, then a broader message goes out to the entire population that says, if you were in this location during these dates, please be advised that we have had someone who has tested positive for COVID. Here are the steps you can take. With the actual messaging, we do a phone call, definitely. But depending on the number of people we're trying to reach, and knowing that time is of the essence for notification to minimize additional exposures, if it's just a couple of people, we can pick up the phone and call them directly. If it's going to be multiple individuals, we're going to end up recording a message with Sarah and having Sarah do the phone call to help with that. And if it is large enough and we need to message in addition to Sarah, we will often push that bulletin to Katie to let individuals know that there's additional information available to them. So we are doing that for notification purposes. And then that information that we've collected, including the number of individuals that were identified through contact tracing, whether a specific number or vague based on location, we turn all of that over to the local health department, who files, tracks, researches, and continues to follow up with us as we do them with any changes in the condition of the individual, as well as those who were contact traced. So it is a pretty specific process, and it is much the same that we have been doing during this entire time. But depending on the number of people that we need to contact, we will utilize the SARE system as appropriate for time efficiency and notification. Any questions on that?
All right, thank you, Carrie. Thank you very much. It is confusing. It is ever-changing. It is the new reality in which we are living, and our goal is to maintain as much freedom and choice as possible. So we'll continue on this track now for the next 2 weeks with everybody masking, following the guidelines, and we'll pick a moment when we can liberalize that a little bit further, in probably coming up in May. So look for more communication around that. As Carrie said, we are going to clarify some of these points in a communique and memo this week, and we'll try to relocate some of the information to be more concise on Katie. So look for that information, but don't hesitate to reach out to the clinic, myself or Carrie, if you have any questions. A note about Katie: tomorrow between 12 and 2, Katie will be off and offline to have a server upgrade. 21st. Oh, 21st. I am totally off. Until my grandson comes, I will forever be off, I think. So 21st, sorry about that. On the 21st from 12 to 2, Katie will not be available. The final announcement I'll make today, and we can take some more questions if there are any, but we're at 9 o'clock already, is that the F-Wing neighborhood meeting will be in the Commons today at 2 p.m. So any neighbors in the F-Wing, come join us for a neighborhood meeting. We'll be masked. We won't be serving any beverages or anything, but this is our annual meeting that we'll have. And I did commit to providing a summary of what we've learned so far, and that will come out in June. We're going to continue these neighborhood meetings, small groups. I think they're helpful. They're helpful to me and the team, so we can get some information from your perspective, and we can share out some information about Covenant Woods at that time. Any remaining questions? Yes, sir.
For the individuals who cannot get here for whatever reason, is it possible for when you're meeting here, they could have a phone line set up where people could call in a question? For the people who can't get here for whatever reason, is it possible they could get a phone line here with a number that people could call in a question?
You're talking about this chat, coffee chat? So we are asking people to submit questions ahead of time in the usual process, so that we can try to address them as Carrie did today. We've had some others that we addressed privately. Can we do a phone line? I think that would be a little disruptive to try to do. If anybody has anything urgent, they can certainly try to contact the desk and get a message to me via text. But I think at this point, we're just going to leave it to the group that's here, and if there are follow-up questions for those watching online or at a later date, they can always contact us, and we can respond. But that's a good suggestion. It's a little hard to manage in this kind of forum. All right, well, thank you, friends. I appreciate your time. Oh, sorry.
The question was the situation on Saturday night at Fireside, where
Yes,
we
ma'am.
could not get our order accepted. And thinking of the fact that Fireside is the only place we can eat on Saturday evening, and I guess that's true on Sunday evening also. That's an awful lot of people to try to serve if all of Independent would happen to be there. The question is, what can we do to provide other dining venues on those 2 evenings? We tried at 6 to enter an order by phone. We were going to use carryout with the COVID situation, and we were told that the order could not be taken. Kitchen was busy. Call back, and after about 5 callbacks and still no order, we walked over, and the hostess, fortunately, was able to provide the order, and so an hour later than our intended meal time, we finally got dinner. But isn't there some way to provide additional service for Saturday and Sunday evenings?
I'm really sorry that that was your experience. I did follow up with Mike. I'm sorry, we did receive that one, and we're going to respond to you privately about it. But I think that it's a fair question to ask out loud for all of us. So I think the unusual circumstances past weekend was that it was a holiday weekend, and I know for sure they had at least 80 orders around between 5 and 6 p.m. That was a real crunch time for them to serve, even to prepare. So it's not even about the space in which the service is being provided. It's about the volume of meals all in a short period of time, with the volume of takeout that people were ordering at that time, and then also holding off on taking any more orders until they can get caught up a little bit. We don't have it in the budget to open up 2 different venues on a Saturday or a Sunday right now. And normally the volume is not that intense. It's about 40 to 50 maximum during that whole time, and according to our studies and statistics that we show. So at this point, it would be very costly to open up another venue just to serve maybe a smaller population. So we're trying to consolidate that. We'll keep thinking it through as we can within our budget to try to get back to some of the other ways in which that we used to have dining venues available and have more choice. I understand sometimes distance is also an issue for folks, but right now it has to be concentrated. But I am sorry that that was your experience.
Is at that time, are the the delivery orders from, I guess it's called Fireside to Go, are they being sold at that same time, Saturday and Sunday nights?
They are, but this was mostly on campus. The delivery is being brought to folks on campus at this time. Things are put in queue as to when they are ordered, much like when you order at any restaurant or DoorDash. Everything comes into a queue and a line to say when did the order come in and when are they expecting it. And also, but we do serve folks here. We're making the meals for folks who are showing up on campus at the same time. It's in parallel. Nobody's jumping a line, but it's all in line.
All right. For example, I don't feel that should be a service we provide if our service is limited. Yeah, if we could get rid of Fireside to Go, would that additionally provide better service to our residents?
It's a worthy question to assess to see if indeed that is impacting current service to residents who live here. If that's the question, and I think that's been posed as a fundamental question about the service that we offer in terms of Woodhouse Catering and Fireside to Go. That is something I will work with the team on to assess further to see what the real impact is. And we're hearing some of these stories about the impact. And so I want to make sure there either is or is not a connection between those two. And then, yes, we can take some action around that.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right, folks. Anyone else? I don't want to dismiss out of hand. All right, well, enjoy the rest of your day. Try to get some fresh air. It's the best medicine yet. And we'll see you around the community. Thanks for coming.